Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to try to finish off section 7.1, which is how to graph parabolas that are in standard form. Now, the problem is that some of our parabolas aren't always going to be in standard form. Remember, what standard form you can see the h and the k to get our vertex pretty easily. The problem is, though, is that some of our parabolas are going to be in quadratic form. An example of quadratic form could be 3y squared plus 2y equals 6x minus 3. This is an example of a quadratic form parabola where it's really hard to see the h, is really hard to see the k. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to take an equation that's in quadratic form just like this, and we're going to need to rewrite it so that it is in standard form. Now, the way we're going to do that is there's a couple of guidelines, and there's about 4 guidelines that we're going to follow. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go through each guideline and we're going to use it for this example. So here is an example of a parabola that's in quadratic form. We got negative 12y plus 10 equals x squared minus 4x plus 14. Again, we really can't see the h, we really can't see the k, so we're going to need to change it to standard form. The way we're going to do that is guideline number 1 is to isolate the squared variable. What that means is whatever variable is being squared, we're going to need to isolate it, get it by itself. Now, based on our example, we have the x. The x is being squared here. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to isolate the x squared with that x. So this x squared and this negative 4x needs to be isolated. The way we're going to do that is let's subtract the 14 over. So we're going to minus 14 on the left, minus 14 on the right. It doesn't matter what side the square variable is as long as it's isolated. So we're going to subtract the 14. Left hand side we're going to end up with negative 12y minus 4 equals x squared minus 4x. So here's where we're at right now. Now, guideline number 2. The next thing we're going to need to do, and this guideline is going to be the one that takes the most work. We're going to need to complete the square until you get a binomial squared. In other words, we're going to need to end up with x minus h quantity squared or y minus k quantity squared. The way we're going to do that is we're going to complete the square. Now, remember completing the square. The process of completing the square is we're going to need to find that special number. So, going back down to my example, we have x squared minus 4x. Remember, to complete the square, you always need a 1 in front of the x squared. In this case, we do here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start completing the square. So we're going to have on the right-hand side, x squared minus 4x plus that special number. Of course, remember that special number, we have to add it to the left-hand side also. So the left-hand side, we're going to have negative 12y minus 4 plus, let's make room for that special number. Keep in mind, formula for that special number is it's b over 2 quantity squared. So in this case, negative 4 over 2 quantity squared, that's just going to give us a positive 4. So positive 4 is going to be my special number on the right. Because I don't have to multiply it to anything on the left, it's also going to be a positive 4. So here is our completing the square process so far. Now, right-hand side, we could factor that. We could factor the right-hand side into x minus 2, x minus 2. Left-hand side, we could simplify. We call it negative 12y, negative 4 plus 4. That cancels, turns to be a 0. But I'm going to leave the 0 there for now just to illustrate. So, right-hand side, let's rewrite that as x minus 2 quantity squared. Left-hand side, let's leave that as negative 12y plus 0. Again, normally we don't need the 0, but I'm going to leave it there just to illustrate my next guideline. So here is the completing the square part. We took the x squared minus 4x, we completed the square all the way until we got this binomial being squared here. Now, the third guideline is we're going to need to factor out the coefficient of the non-squared variable. So that way we'll end up with some number times x minus h, or some number times y minus k. So on our example, look at the non-squared variable. Here's my non-squared variable here. There's the coefficient of the non-squared variable. What I'm going to do with that is I'm going to factor out that negative 12. So I'm going to factor out the negative 12. I'm left with y plus 0, because 0 divided by negative 12 is still 0. Right hand side, we're going to leave it as is. Now notice, we went all the way from quadratic form, we rewrote it, and now here we have standard form. So with this standard form, the final guideline is to graph the parabola. From here, let's get our vertex. Remember, vertex is h comma k, and you always take the opposite. H is always with the x, k is always with the y. So in this case, our vertex is positive 2 comma 0. So let's put that down. 1, 2 comma 0. Next thing we need to do is we need to decide, is it going to be horizontal or is it going to be vertical? In this case, because x is being squared, my parabola is going to be vertical. So let's put my vertical axis of symmetry. So there's my vertical axis of symmetry. From there, let's find our p-value. P-value is going to be our coefficient divided by 4. So negative 12 divided by 4, that gives me negative 3. So that means that my focus is down 3 units. So 1, 2, 3. There's my focus. My directrix is up 3 units. 1, 2, 3. There's my directrix. So my directrix is going across. My vertex is between the directrix and the focus. And my focus is going down 3 units. Now, next thing we need to do is we need to get a couple extra points for my parabola. Distance from the directrix to the focus is how we're going to find the extra points for the parabola. So distance between the directrix and the focus is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So because it's 6 units, let's count 6 units for my focus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 1 point on my parabola. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's the second point on my parabola. Now from there, we can graph it going from our vertex to those points. So we got our vertex. Let's curve out to the first point. Go from the vertex again. Curve out to the second point. There is my parabola, which started off in quadratic form. We completed the square, got all the way down to standard form, got our vertex, our p-value, and we were able to graph it.